Meghan Markle dragged Prince Harry to Hollywood, I'm sure she told him many a story about the amazing success that they would have in the entertainment industry. After all, she was a former actress, he is a prince, and obviously that has to count for something. They did manage to secure mega deals with Netflix and then with Spotify, and then everything seems to have kind of collapsed over the last year or so for them. And so you got to wonder, what was Megan's biggest mistake in this whole Hollywood venture? I did a video last week talking about how perhaps marrying Harry was one of Megan's worst mistakes. And in that video, I focused more on the aspects of them being royals. But this time we're going to talk about Hollywood and how they completely and utterly botched their Hollywood move to such an extent that I don't know if they'll ever recover, because the industry is in such a different place than where it was when they even moved there. The whole industry is sort of starting to collapse on itself. We've had one of the worst box office weekends in Memorial Day history, a 3-decade low. 3 decades. And that's because Hollywood is losing a lot of its shine for many people. And Prince Harry and Meghan Markle moving there is really disastrous in many ways, because they have not only taken over the mantle of being very toxic within the royal fold, now they're in an industry that a lot of people consider somewhat something they're just not as interested in engaging in as they were even a couple of years ago. And celebrities are a huge part of that, as is what Hollywood is producing. But looking at this overall picture, Meghan Markle dragging Harry to Hollywood, I'm sure under this imaginary world of them having this massive success, to look at their dismal failures on multiple levels, I'm sure has to hurt quite a bit. But it could somewhat been mitigated, and Meghan had done a couple of things so much better when they moved to Hollywood, because let's be honest, this is totally outside of Prince Harry's wheelhouse. He has no experience in the entertainment industry whatsoever, and it shows for them. So were they always destined to fail in Hollywood, or did they come in technically what could have been the best time to be in the entertainment industry, totally squandered that opportunity, and then now set themselves up in an industry that's failing as they fail along with it? So we are going to explore this topic today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany, and I provide y'all compelling royal commentary about the latest news, sometimes the drama going on behind the scene. So please hit that subscribe button if you would. That would be absolutely fantastic. It helps support the channel as we continue to grow. To have a relationship with Ana Lucia Diamond, I do just want to point out here my lovely studs. I love having these studs. I probably wear them too often. I need to change them out more. But I love them so much because I think that as classic, and this is not a full diamond, but just like little diamonds together. They're lab created from Ana Lucia, and the classic stud, you just cannot go wrong with it. So these particular ones are not available, but I'll link something else that's really similar if you're interested, because I absolutely love them. I think they're great quality. Again, I wear these all the time. I never take them out. And so if you are totally interested, if you use code ROYAL20, you will save 20% and get some amazing looking, very stylish diamonds that you can wear around either the house or on vacation or anywhere, because I wear these all the time on vacation anywhere, because they're just so perfect and classic. I mean, can you not be more classic with an elegant solitaire stud? I don't think so. Okay, so on to this story, because I've been formulating this because I wanted to talk about, Meghan's mistake there with marrying Harry in many ways, because what I ended up thinking about is if she had actually dated him, dumped him, and then waited and knew that maybe Suits would have this massive resurgence, I think she'd be much better poised in Hollywood to have greater success than now, because unfortunately, Harry and Meghan became way too overexposed. Their brand just became so incredibly toxic that people just don't really want to associate with them. And we saw this as well with Buckingham Palace recently actually pulling the initial letter Harry gave to the media about his demands about Meghan, how mad he was about how they were treating her and everything. And really, as Richard Palmer pointed out, he's one of the royal reporters, that note really did spark an immense level of toxicity on multiple levels. So if you're a royal follower, a royal journalist, royal commentator, all that spread like wildflower. It ended up in death threats and so many different things, all because of that simple letter. Really did set Harry and Meghan up for failure in so many ways. But when it came to Hollywood and Harry and Meghan escaping there during the early days of Mexit and the COVID lockdowns and everything, Harry and Meghan were actually set up to have fantastic success. They had a Netflix deal potentially worth 100, $150 million, depending on who you ask. Obviously, some of that is wrapped up in budget information and everything, but there could have been a massive success there in the future for them. They also signed a deal with Spotify, which is obviously a huge, successful brand as well. And so, if they were part of Spotify, they could have had this huge success as well in their series and everything, as they did different podcasts. They even allegedly had a podcast studio built in their home. And so, really, they had all the resources available to them in the world. And somehow they ended up squandering all of it. They've lost their Spotify deal, and I don't think Netflix is very far behind. Because obviously it's still going to continue going for a while. They have a couple things in the pipeline, but Polo documentary and a Meghan Markle cooking show, I don't think is going to cut it. And so, how has Meghan squandered this so incredibly badly? Because again, given that she was in the entertainment industry, grew up in the entertainment industry, she should have known what the tools were for success. But honestly, she didn't really have much success on her own in Hollywood. So it's not really a surprise that her and Harry going there was not going to exhibit in much success either. Yes, they had some initially. But for Meghan Markle, at the end of the day, a royal title doesn't make up for a lack of talent. And I think that is what's kicked them in the behind in so many ways, and lack of work ethic and everything. But there's also a couple other things that are going on in the broader entertainment industry that I think if Harry and Meghan again had played their cards right, they could be in a great spot right now. But instead, they're kind of in a terrible spot because they're not even the sole producers on their series anymore. Somebody else is partners with them, which decreases the amount they can make, gives somebody else greater control over things. And they've always had a lot of control issues. So I find this topic really fascinating because I've watched the entertainment industry for a long, long time. I love movies, I love television shows and everything. And what I found is over the last 5, 6 years, I've stopped watching anything new. I don't want to watch anything new. Everything is so incredibly terrible. Terrible writing, terrible characters. Nothing makes sense that much anymore. And just so woke that something becomes really unwatchable. And Harry and Meghan being part of this industry, unfortunately, colors them with that. And they are, of course, fully on that narrative, anyways. And it's a narrative that's dying. So let's look into this real quick because I had a couple of thoughts and I really wanted to share them because I just find this whole thing so interesting, how somebody can have all the resources in the world and yet utterly and completely fail under the weight of their own hubris and inability to really think through what they're doing. So, when Harry and Meghan came into Hollywood, it was during the streaming gold rush because what happened? COVID happened. And so everybody was locked down. And that meant that everybody was at home. And guess what they were at home doing? They were streaming. They were streaming a lot. And so all of these streaming companies were like, yes, let's get in on it. And Harry and Meghan signed with Netflix, obviously the biggest. And honestly, Netflix has essentially won the streaming wars. It's kind of what everybody has determined as different production companies pulled their catalogs from Netflix. They've had to begrudgingly go back and sell those catalogs to Netflix because they weren't able to sustain their own streaming platform because basically every production company wanted their own platform so that they could rake in the streaming dough. But as it turns out, licensing it to Netflix was actually much more successful than trying to build and maintain their own streaming service. So it was a very interesting time. But Harry and Meghan, when they signed the Netflix deal, it's like, wow, $100 million and everybody's into streaming. And all Hollywood wanted to do was produce, produce, produce. And they were allowed to go back to work and within a fair amount of time. Obviously, there were a lot of restrictions, but they were allowed to go back to work a bit faster than everybody else. So during that time, Harry and Meghan should have absolutely been hitting the ground running. They should have been hitting the ground running and trying to create as much as possible. But Harry and Meghan, their egos are bigger than the state of California because they just wanted to meander. They took their time. They wanted to tell their story. And so even though they signed the deal in the fall of 2020, they didn't actually put anything to screen until 2022. And during that point, a lot of things had changed because as the COVID restrictions lessons and productions got up to speed, 2022 was around the time right before there were two consecutive strikes, one with SAG and one with the Writers Guild. And what happened was, as everybody was getting back to work, sort of in that tail end of 2022, very early 2023, all of a sudden everybody got hit with all these strikes. And so nothing was going into production for a long time. And so Harry and Meghan, when they should have been having, let's say that would have been maybe their third or fourth produced thing coming out, was only their first. And it was the one thing we all knew was going to be a massive success. And as the strikes went on, and as productions got further and further behind, things became more and more challenging for Harry and Meghan and the broader rest of the public because even as productions started to gear up after the strike, the rest of the world was kind of like, yeah, you know what? We're not as interested in what you're selling anymore. And in fact, there's so many foreign television shows, movies, and everything that are getting a lot bigger stage because what Hollywood is producing is so bad that nobody wants to watch it. And the entire industry is essentially contracting. Disney lost potentially hundreds of millions, if not over $1 billion last year at the box office because almost every movie they put out, I think they were in the bottom couple of the worst performing movies of the year, and we don't even still know some of the final budgets of some of these films that got up into 300 plus million dollars and then got a return of $500 million, which you might think, oh, they struck even. No, no, no. They had to get some of that to the theaters, some of that to actors, maybe. And there was a good chunk more of marketing. Sometimes marketing is actually can double a production's budget. So, all of this to say is that Harry and Meghan, as they came into this time of boon, they dropped their show right before the crash because after everybody came back from the strikes due to the different regulations and everything, all of the industry contracted. Everybody contracted because they had to have more writers in the room. And that meant they had to budget more for it. And so they decided to cut back on all these things they used to do, the number of pilots that went out every year, and all these sorts of things. And so, because of that, Harry and Meghan really are sort of up a creek without a paddle because they didn't jump on the streaming gold rush when they had a chance. They made the mistake of thinking, oh, everything will be there when we want it to be there. But as every production company is evaluating where the future will lead, they're kind of looking at productions and going, well, unless you're going to make me a lot of money, I'm just not interested in putting that much behind it because at this point, we've had the worst Memorial box office this weekend. So let's take a look here real quick because the headlines are pretty terrible. So we got Hollywood Reporter here. Box office meltdown. Furiosa edges past Garfield to win Memorial Day with worst #1 opening in 3 decades. And here's the other one that says Furiosa just barely beats the Garfield movie in disastrous Memorial Day weekend, the worst in decades. And this is from Variety. And I bring all this up because although Harry and Meghan had nothing to do with these productions, they're part now of what is essentially a dying industry. The movie industry is dying. And that is because of a lot of factors unrelated to Harry and Meghan. But what they failed to do is set themselves up well, build up a reputation so that when this faltering was happening, they're actually set up pretty well for success because people who have either produced good shows, continue to produce good things, those sorts of things, they're going to go on to success. But those who are less talented are going to slowly be weeded out over the time as success continues to dwindle for a lot of these productions and the whole industry itself has to reset. And Harry and Meghan either didn't think of that, didn't consider that, or just even have no idea what to do. And next, we have the death of the movie star. I don't know if you've heard these talks and reports or everything, that pretty much the idea of a movie star is dead. You don't really go to a movie anymore because a actor or actress, let's say Julia Roberts, Brad Pitt, George Clooney, and in the heyday, Marilyn Monroe or Grace Kelly, you don't go to the movies. Arnold Schwarzenegger, others, you don't go to the movies because a certain star is in them anymore. You go because you hear good reviews or what have you. There's no really draw in the same way as movie stars used to be. It used to be that if you were a movie star, let's say Julia Roberts, there are diehard fans that will go to every single movie you were in, or even more the lay people go, well, she's a good actress. Her movies are generally good. So even if the movie is bad, sometimes people go. And there's a draw of just a name attached to a production. Honestly, that doesn't really exist anymore. It's more about IPs and everything. And that's honestly as well not doing quite as well either. But this whole idea of a movie star is pretty much dead anymore. I think people think sort of the last surviving movie star is really Tom Cruise. And I'm not a huge Tom Cruise fan because of all the Scientology stuff, so I don't follow him that closely. But I just find that very, very interesting because Harry and Meghan are going into this industry where it's slowly starting to decay in some ways. What used to be something big and huge is sort of starting to dwindle. There is this different view of what celebrity is anymore. And so it's no longer something reserved for the high and mighty. It's something that anybody could be. And that's a struggle Harry and Meghan are having too, is that anybody can kind of be that anymore. So in some ways, they're not as special in the entertainment industry. Obviously, hard work is a huge factor for them as well. But because anybody can be a celebrity, it becomes something that's not as interesting as it used to be. And so Harry and Meghan, I think when they look at the Hollywood industry, they expected their royal titles to take them so far. But yes, it was sort of an interesting thing. But there are so many other people doing other things within that entertainment space. Their shine starts to diminish more and more over time because they're sort of kind of like anybody else in the industry. There's nothing that makes them really unique at this point except for the royal titles. But the bad thing is, and I think this was their other huge mistake, is that they failed to actually create good content because content is king. And content is what can drive you forward. You need good work ethic. You need to hire good people. You need to have robust storylines, robust storytelling, all these sorts of things to make it well in the entertainment industry. And Harry and Meghan moving from London to California, I mean, via Canada, they needed to actually work hard and create things because at some point, the bandwidth of that royal title is going to start to diminish over time because you know what? There are other people without a royal title who are doing better than you. And if they're doing better than you and making X company more money, I mean, they're going to go with those other people because the royal title only gets you so far. You had to take it the rest of the way. And that's what I think Meghan Markle failed to understand is that, yes, having a royal title, oh, that gets her foot in the door a lot more than it did when she was simply Meghan Markle. But that doesn't matter in the long run because you need to like slam your foot in and really wide open the door so that you can get ahead in a way that's unique and interesting. And Harry and Meghan failed to do that. And so they kind of become, you could argue, boring. You could offer maybe just they've lost so much of their clout because they failed to produce good content. And so there's less of an interest in investing to them because we've already established that the whole industry is contracting. And so you want to get rid of the people who aren't doing well. And Harry and Meghan aren't doing well. I imagine these two things are sort of their last gasp for breath with Netflix. And without at Netflix, what else are they gonna do? They have the Lemonada deal, but Megan, oh, she can't do two things at the same time. She can't work on her podcast and do the cooking show. I mean, I run two YouTube channels and it's exhausting sometimes, but I can do it. So I'm pretty sure she can do those two things, especially because she has all the help in the world. But she just doesn't seem to want to do that. And because of that, it's hurting her time and time again. And the other aspect of the death of the movie star is basically that we've changed even our perception of how we see stars. We don't generally like them anymore because they've started to get too political. And that is exemplified, I thought, today when I was watching Robert De Niro for some inexplicable reason needed to hold a press conference to criticize Donald Trump. Now, this is not a statement on politics. I just think it's stupid. Why do I care what Robert De Niro has to say really about anything except acting? I don't care what he has to say about politics. I really don't. If he is not going to sway my vote one way or the other, I don't care because he's a celebrity. He lives this very weird lifestyle that I could never hope to achieve. And so why would I take his word for anything? And I just think it's bizarre that for some reason because he's a celebrity that he feels the need he has the gall to think he can go up there and give a press conference about a political figure and then we should all listen to him. He got mad when people started heckling him and everything, but my first instinct is like, why are you there? You don't need to be there. Nobody cares about your opinion. But we see this through a lot of celebrities now because they've gotten so political. They've lost mystique of what celebrity and movie stars used to be. We used to not know that much about their personal political opinions, which I think is mostly fine. Why? Because we are asking you to act. We are asking you to sing. We don't want your political opinion. Now, yes, you may feel free to give it, but you end up potentially alienating about half your audience by doing so. Sometimes it's just better not to say anything at all. In fact, your job is to act, so act. And yes, if you feel passionate about something, maybe you can speak about it. But you also have to recognize is that we are not required to listen to you, and you may get heckled in a crowd. And of course, Robert De Niro looked kind of terrible because he's, yelling at this other guy, and it's like, but you shouldn't have even been there. There was no reason for you to insert yourself into this discussion, really, because it has nothing to do with you. And so all of Hollywood is guilty of this in many, many ways. And Meghan Markle and Harry, of course, are as well. We know she is wildly left in her beliefs and she's very, very progressive. And that's fine. But I don't really need to hear about it. Number one, because I don't really care. But number two, because I think what frustrates so many of us on the outside looking in is that celebrities stand there being all sanctimonious about their positions when they can't even conceive of the other side. So there's kind of a talk in the United States of the flyover states. What that means is you have New York and California on either side of the coast. And many celebrities, most celebrities live between those two places, New York or California. They fly over that middle section. They have no idea what people think in Iowa, in Texas, in Ohio. They actually think all those people are backwards thinkers. They don't have very high opinions of them. But what they fail to realize is that the more they talk, we have a high opinion of them too. And so their best thing to do is actually to be quiet and not really say much. And that has contributed to the death of the movie star because now we know too much and now we tend not to like them anymore. And that's a big problem going forwards. And I think Harry and Meghan are falling into that trap too. She only attracts half of her potential audience. I would say even probably more of a fourth of her potential audience is there. She kind of offends everybody else because she can't seem to keep her political opinions, her political beliefs out of things. And she has this very much, you can feel the kind of the desire to champion certain political causes. And she's the right to do that. But at the same time, too, you fall into the trap of thinking that what you say can actually make a difference when in fact, maybe it just sort of annoys people. Now, the other thing is that celebrities anymore are a dime a dozen. You know how we know this is because anybody can be a celebrity anymore. Anyone. You can go reality TV show, a game show. You can do a television show or movie, or you can even be on YouTube. And you can have more views than some television shows that are broadcast on night to the entire country of 300 plus million people. That's insane. That's insane. Our view of celebrity and stuff has become very, very fragmented because our entertainment overall has become exceptionally fragmented. And that has resulted in pretty much everybody being a celebrity. And Harry and Meghan leaving royalty, and we'll get back to this topic, leaving royalty set themselves up as just celebrities who can be anyone. And so I have actually been recognized in public. It's a little weird if you ever see me, well, feel free to say hi, but it is kind of odd. And I also saw actually one time a girl I followed on Instagram who has over 1 million Instagram followers. Actually saw her in a department store once. Some guy I think asked for a selfie. She gave it, and she's a regular person. Anybody can be a celebrity anymore. The influencer culture means that anybody with a large following, larger than some celebrities, can have an impact and can actually be well known, can be a pseudo celebrity in many ways because people know them. I mean, overall, my videos have been watched between the two channels, I think upwards of like 60 million or something like that. So that's not everyone, but close to 1 million plus people, I'm sure, have seen some of my videos. That's insane. That level of reach was something unfathomable just a couple of years ago, even especially 10, 15, 20 years ago. That wasn't just didn't happen. I thought that it was very interesting. There's a conversation between Jordan Peterson and Dennis Quaid, and it was talking about the death of the movie star. But what I thought was interesting about Dennis Quaid said is that at one point it was really hard to get on something like television or movies. That was something really, really hard. It's not anymore. People probably play my videos on their television. So this fragmentation and this kind of downward pull of celebrities, Harry and Meghan going to Hollywood and trying to be that and yet royal. It's not working, number one. But number two, they've set themselves up so incredibly badly. They made such a mistake by thinking somehow the celebrity was better than royalty. And this is where obviously Meghan's true mistake lies. She, I have no idea how, thought for some reason that was better to be a celebrity in Hollywood than it was to be royal. And this was actually interesting because somebody got on my Twitter and they made this comment. American celeb status is a hell of a lot more desirable than that of a UK royal. The first is earned and irrelevant. The second, well, you just have to be born. Then you live a scripted life, a life riddled with scandal, racism, and toxicity. And obviously, of course, there's so much wrong with that. But American celeb status is a hell of a lot more than desirable than royalty. I don't think so. In fact, that is so laughably dumb. It's almost causes you just to laugh out loud at the silliness of that. Do you know who starstruck celebrities? It's royalty. And you know why? Because you can only be born into it or marry into it. Those are the only two ways. Doesn't matter your talent, doesn't matter your fame, doesn't matter anything else. You have only two routes. You marry in or you're born in. That's it. Anybody can be a celebrity now. The royalty is still the most exclusive club on the face of the planet because you have only two routes in. And if you don't hit those two routes, you can't be in. There's no in. How like there's very few number of actual princes and princesses out there, kings and queens. Why? Because it's such an elusive, exclusive club for the vast majority of the world. And you know what? Right now, there's only one person in the world who is the Princess of Wales. Yes, Diana also held that title, but there is only one who holds it right now. And there will only be one until the next one. So you are one out of 7 point something odd billion people with that particular title. Same with the Princess of Orange. Same with, although it's a bit different because all the Scandinavian countries use crown prince or princess. There's only one person who holds that title in each of those countries. And because of that, it's this massive exclusive club that you can't really buy your way into, with the exception of the Greeks, but something that you have to have the connections to even get into that upper echelon. And anybody, like, for example, the Beckhams, what are they striving for most of all? What would that family want more than anything else in the world? Is to be fully accepted into those aristocratic circles. Why? Because it's entirely exclusive and pretty much based on birth. You can't buy your way in, you can't force your way in. Usually, you have to marry in. That is the truth. Yes, Catherine and William were friendly and are friendly with the Beckhams, but they're not their friends because their friends are an exclusive club of people who live in that world and only that world. And it is so different than celebrity. Celebrities would kill to be in that exclusive level. Some of them would, not all of them, because they couldn't quite live with the restrictions. But they all recognize something incredibly important is that there's only select number of people who can hold that particular title or role. Anybody can be a celebrity anymore. You can be a famous movie star or a person with a YouTube or Instagram account, TikTok account, whatever. The true exclusivity, and I think the greater emphasis now is on royalty, in part because we have become so decentralized when it comes to celebrity that to see something as more elusive and aspiring, we're tending to move towards royalty. And that was Meghan Markle's critical, unmistakable error. She went from the most exclusive club in the world to the club that anybody can potentially join. And I'm sure there are people in Hollywood, all over Hollywood, looking at her as if she's a fool. Because how in the world could you possibly think, imagine, or whatever that being in Hollywood is somehow better than royalty? Because it's not. It's not. And that is what's so incredibly crazy about this entire scenario is that Meghan thought that somehow she could take the sparkle of royalty and put it in Hollywood and walk that around and everyone would be in awe of her. Well, maybe that worked for a hot second, but guess what? Reality is crashing in and they look increasingly silly, constantly citing themselves as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex because everybody's like, you're just like us now. Even the Hollywood stars have to know, well, technically, they're just like us now. There's nothing unique or interesting about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle anymore. They're just like everyone else. And that was Harry and Meghan Markle's decision. But I guess they just didn't fully appreciate the ramifications of what that would mean because it has negatively impacted them, I think, in so many ways because everybody's looking at them going, so what makes you special anymore? Harry and Meghan left their specialness behind and traded it for something as banal as being a Hollywood celebrity. And Meghan Markle has descended even further, you could argue, in some ways, by setting up a lifestyle brand, which so many other average, normal people who I have followed on Instagram are also doing. She has become essentially an influencer, gone from the pinnacle of royalty, flattened down to being an influencer, something that anybody can do. It's crazy to think about. And because of that, post Mexit, they could have had a spectacular run in Hollywood potentially. Meghan Markle could have used the platform that Harry gave her by marrying her into something truly powerful within the royal family or within Hollywood in general. But she had to work hard. She had to really try. And she hasn't done any of that. So at this point, her Hollywood star continues to dim because at the end of the day, when you leave royalty for Hollywood, everybody expects something grand. And if you can't deliver, why, you're just a celebrity, just like they are. There ain't nothing special about you anymore. So, guys, that is it for this video. Let me know what you think about Meghan's worst Hollywood mistakes. I'd love to get your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.